recording here, and welcome to Faith and Calm, number 125. Wow, another quarter century here. So we are up to 125, and tonight we're going to talk about the Magnificent You as a preparation for Rosh Hashanah, because as we know, Rosh Hashanah is coming. It's going to be Monday, Tuesday, and yeah, so we're not going to. The class is not on next Monday, so don't tune in. Not going to be here. I'm going to hopefully be away. And well, some people don't know. Like I was in the checkout line for Whole Foods, and the checkout lady, who there's one of the bagger ladies, and she's Jewish. She always wants to say something nice to me, to show that she's Jewish. So she said, "I wish you a very happy Passover." Confused a little here. It's the shofar holiday, bizarre. Okay? You'd have to understand what's going on here and so forth. So. But of course,
really
bad. Yeah, people are not in tune.
I guess New York is like a little different, like the New York metropolitan.
Yeah, it wouldn't happen in Israel, but in America, people are very confused.
I know. I think New York also, like where I grew up in Long Island. No, yeah. Jewish people know it's a different. New York is New York. I guess.
Hey, she knows the holiday.
How do you know that she's Jewish?
Oh, yeah. We've had many conversations with her. I don't know if you know this lady, but she's there. She's always bagging there and so forth. And
I can't believe, I think it's on the calendar that it says Rosh Hashanah. The regular calendars, yeah, it says Rosh Hashanah on it.
What can I tell you? This is reality. This is my experience.
No, I'm just...
Let me go ahead.
Am I wrong?
Let me continue on the class. I can get I sidetracked things. Okay.
The good intention was there. It might have been a slip of the tongue. Who knows?
Oh, yeah. Oh. Anyway, so okay. So here we're going to talk about Magnificent You, the Magnificent You, how great you are. So the Baal Shem Tov, this is a very interesting thing. There's a law, halacha. It's in the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah. It says that a shaliach tzibur, an agent, an emissary of the community, usually also referred to the person who a chazan who davens from the Amud, but it could be anybody who's a public agent of the community. Is the community. He cannot yotze. He cannot fulfill the obligation for somebody else unless he is also mechuyev, unless he's also obligated. Meaning, for example, the usual examples are that a person who's not obligated to say the Megillah cannot say the Megillah for somebody who's supposed to hear the Megillah. If he himself isn't supposed to hear it, then he can't say it for somebody else and get their and do their obligation for them. Or somebody can't blow the shofar for somebody if he is not obligated to blow the shofar. So somebody who's not obligated, not a Jew, whatever, he may have already done it, whatever situation, he's not obligated anymore. Once he's already done it, he can't do it again. He can. The shofar he can. The shofar he can do. But anyway, there are different reasons why he can't be obligated. There are reasons to be accepted. That is the technical legal thing. The Baal Shem Tov says there's a deeper level in this, and that's what we want to get to. The deeper level, the deeper expression is, the word was in Hebrew chiyuv. Chiyuv can mean obligated, but it also is used in a legal sense, meaning that when somebody leaves the court case, leaves the court, they are either innocent or guilty. Chiyuv can mean you're guilty. So he says, unless the person is guilty, he cannot redeem the other people. He cannot take out the other people from their obligation. What does that mean? It means as follows. It means that you can't, if you don't get down and get and experience what other people are experiencing, and you can't relate to them and empathize with them, because I've also been in that situation, you can't really release and get other people out of a hole. If you don't know what other people are going through and you can talk to them, they know that you're not, you don't really understand who I am and what I'm going through. It's only when if you've gone through it yourself, then you can actually help other people who are in that same situation. And that's the specialness of people who should realize that who are going through difficult situations. You have a tremendous opportunity to be able to help other people who are going through similar kinds of things. The Baal Shem Tov explains it like as follows. Imagine that there's a guy like a lifeguard. You cannot get people out of the water and save them by just saying, you should go that way. You got to risk your life and jump in the water yourself. And it's dangerous. But when you do that, you can actually help another person. That's what it means, that you have to be a chaya with the other person. And Rabbi Wai gave 2 good stories about this. And I think they're cute, and I think I like them. And if I may have told them before, but we'll see. So there was a rabbi, I think he was in Lakewood, New Jersey. His name was David Trank. He passed away just not so long ago. And the story with him is as follows. He was a high school teacher, and he was a good teacher. And I'll tell you why he was a good teacher, because he knew how to relate to people.
Is that when they wrote a book about him?
What? David Trank?
Yeah, I think they wrote a book about him. Just Love
Maybe
Them?
they did. Maybe they did. Yeah.
I'm going to check.
I'll tell you the story. So, so the story is oh, okay. Yeah, that looks like him. I think I looked him up to find out who he was. So the story is as follows. There was a kid in his high school, was a very wild kid, always get into trouble. And one Friday night, he told one of his friends, he says, I broke into the principal's office and I took his keys and I'm going to the movies. And the guy who was listening said, good, can I come with you? And he says, no, it's bad enough that I'm getting in trouble. I'm not helping anybody else get in trouble. Nobody else gets any pleasure from helping somebody else. And his friend says, if you don't take me with you, I'm going to snitch on you. And he says, at this point, I really don't care anymore. I'm in so much trouble. I really don't care about anything anymore. Go ahead and snitch. So this kid went, got the rabbi's car on Friday night, drove it on Shabbos to the movie theaters, and his friend went and snitched on him. So David Trank found out about it, and he told him, he told his wife, he says, this was already sitting down for a Shabbos meal, and he tells his wife, I have to go somewhere, and he puts on his coat, and he says, where's this movie theater? And the guy says, it's 2 miles away. What are you going to do? He says, I'll walk. Of course, I'm going to walk. So he walks 2 miles in the cold in the winter to the movie theater. He gets to the movie theater. Of course, he has no money, but he tells the ticket person, he says, look, do I look like a person who's going to go watch movies? I'm a rabbi. I don't do that. Especially Friday night. I'm not going to do that. The reason I'm here is because I have a student here and I have to give him an important message. Would you allow me to come in and give the message to my student? And I'll leave right away as soon as I give the message. So she says, sure, go right ahead. So he starts wandering around, and there's it's one of these multiplexes. There's a lot of different theaters. And he's going from theater to theater in the dark, trying to see if he can find the student. Finally, he gets to one of the rooms, and he sees there's this guy. There he is. He's sitting in one of the seats. So he goes and he sits down next to him, and he's sitting there for a little bit. And the story is told actually by the student. The student told the story when David Trank passed away. And he said, I was sitting there and I was glued to the movie, but, you sort of have a sixth sense that there's somebody just sat down next to you. So he takes a look and looks over his shoulder and looks to see who's next to him. He's the Rosh Yeshiva, whose car he just stole. Like his heart was like pounding. He says, Rabbi, what are you doing here? Do you also come to movies Friday night? I didn't know. The rabbi says, no, I didn't. I don't do that. I came because I have something I have to tell you. Says, Rabbi, what do you want? When did you come? 2 miles at least. When did you come to tell me? The rabbi says, I came to tell you that the popcorn in this movie theater is not kosher. You shouldn't eat it. It's not kosher. He says, Rabbi, that's what you came to tell me? He says, yeah, that's what I came to tell you. He gives him a big kiss on his forehead, and he says, now I'm going home. He says, you're going home? That's it? He says, yeah, I'm going home. It's Friday night. I'm going home back to my Shabbos meal. The rabbi gets up and walks out. The boy couldn't pay attention to the movie anymore. He runs out of the theater. He follows after his rabbi, and he walks home with him all the whole way home, and they're talking and they're schmoozing about life and how they grew up. They don't talk anything about the whole business with what happened and stealing the car or anything else like that. And when he finally gets to the rabbi's house, he says, "Rabbi, I am never stealing a car again, and I'm never going to violate Shabbos again." That was the story. That's what it means to get down and to really reach a person. You have to go to them. You got to connect with them. That's I think what the Baal Shem Tov was saying. That we really have to realize that that there's a preciousness and a specialness in each one of us. And the second story is sort of similar to that.
Story. It's really a wonderful story.
It's an interesting story. It's an interesting story of what it means to be an educator. And this is even another story of what it means to be an educator and how that you have to read an educator, you have to relate and you have to connect to other people. So there was one boy who was once, his teacher once was visit him. And this was like 20 years after he graduated. He had this teacher in third grade. And the teacher sees him and he says, "Oh, I've been seeing you for a long time. What's happened to you since third grade?" And he says, I became a teacher. So the teacher says, what inspired you? And he says, "You." You did, because I saw what kind of an impact you had on me. And therefore, I decided I also have to become an educator because you can really have an impact on people by being a teacher. He says, "What impact did I have on you?" He says, "You must remember the story, Rabbi. I was, again, another kid. It was a little bit wild. I was in class one day, third grade. I always wanted to have a nice watch. And one of the boys walked in with a beautiful watch. And I got envious of it. And I couldn't help myself. I went and I stole the watch. He found out about it during class. And he told me about the teacher about it. And he told you. And so you announced to the class, he said, "Listen, there's a thief in the class. And that person should turn in the watch." And nobody turned in the watch. So the teacher said, "I'm going to have to lock the door. We're going to have to have a process, and I'm going to find out who stole that watch. Everybody line up, and I'm going to look into each of the boys' pockets." But one thing before that, I want everybody to close their eyes because I don't want you to find out who actually was the one with the watch. And he went from boy to boy to boy. And you went from boy to boy to boy, and you looked in each of the pockets. You came to mine, and you found the watch, and you took it, and then you went on, and then you said, the teacher, you said you found the watch, you gave it back, and I was so impressed because you saved my honor, you saved my dignity, and you never mentioned it even that I was the thief. You never brought it up. You never announced it to me personally, and I was just so impressed. That's what a teacher does. And he says, "You must remember the story. It was such a story." And the teacher says, "Actually, I don't remember the story at all." He says, "Why not? I mean, you found this watch in my pocket. You knew who I was." He says, "Actually," the teacher says, "I didn't know who you were because my eyes were closed also."
Huh.
Very nice. That's
So,
a very nice story.
interesting story. This is what both of these stories are really trying to hammer home the specialness of a person, even though we may mess up, we may have negative thoughts about ourselves, we might be, but it's very much in tune with the spirit of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, about tshuva, and about the power of return, because when you knock people down, you don't go anywhere. You don't really get, you can't actually improve anyone else. And this is what, which story do I want to tell now?
Did you say you can't actually improve somebody else?
That's what I wanted to say. You can't really improve until you go back to the situation that where you were. So I'm trying to remember the story. I just heard it. I think it's Rabbi Meir Premijlan. He says an interesting thing. There's a story in the Tanakh. It's about King David. King David, it says, we say in the Tillim, in Kapitel 51, in chapter 51, it says, Lam Natseach Mizmor LaDavid, a song of choirs to the for King David. It's a song, it's a Mizmor, it's a tune, it's a melody. And then what does he say? Kasha bo Kasha shabo Nasan Hanavi Akash David ba Bathsheba. That right after the story is that right after David had relations with Bathsheba, the prophet Natan came to David, and he told him the following story. He said he didn't tell him, he didn't come right out and tell David, you're in trouble. He told him a story first. He said, you know what? Let me get a judgment from the king. There was a rich man and a poor man who lived in a town. And the poor man had only one sheep and he had nothing else. And that was his whole sustenance. That was all his food, everything he had. That was the only thing he had in life. And one day the rich man had a guest and he needed some food. And so he went and he stole the sheep and he slaughtered it and he served it to his guest. King, what should be done to the rich man? So the King David says to Nathan, he says, that man should be put to death. That's awful what he did. So Prophet Nathan says, David says, actually, that's the story is about you. There was this man, Uriah HaHittite. He had a wife, and you have 6 other wives, and you decided that you had him killed. He went in battle. You sent him to the forefront, and he was died, and you had relations with his wife, and so you are the one who you just proclaimed your guilt on yourself. And David, to his credit, says 2 words. He says, Chasati l'Hashem, I sinned to Hashem. So Rabbi Meir Premishlan says, why did Nathan have to go through this whole story and this thing? He could have just gone straight. I'm a prophet, you're guilty, and you did something terrible, and you have to do tshuva for it. So he says a very interesting idea on this whole idea. Very, very deep and prescient idea. He says, there are 2 kinds of tshuva that you can do. And there's 2 ways you can approach a person when they did something bad. One way is you can approach a person something bad and saying, you know what, you are really bad. And you're a scum. And look what you did. And look how terrible you are. And look at how you're going to be remembered about this and so forth. It makes them really feel bad and give them a lot of musar and really tell and show them a big picture of how awful they are and how terrible they're serving Hashem. That doesn't really work, and especially doesn't work in our generation. When you push somebody down, there's a couple reactions that can happen. Either they'll just tune you out, or they will just close up like a clamshell and they'll just feel terrible about themselves, or they'll start yelling and screaming back at you and arguing back, thinking you're the bad one, and so forth. It just doesn't work. When you try and improve people by telling them how awful they are. So the Meir Pershlem says it's like a mirror. You cannot improve a person. You cannot improve yourself. If you did something bad, you cannot balance it by feeling. Well, let me explain that. So what did Nathan do to him? It says an interesting word. It says when Nathan came to David, just like he came to Bathsheba, and he says a very powerful and very interesting idea. It says, how did King David come to Bathsheba? He came to her happy. He came to her, it means also it's a sexual metaphor. He came in a very happy way because he knew, even his soul knew that this was the woman who was designated to me. The Zohar says that Bathsheba was designated for King David from before they were born. And he, in his desire for her, was something that was fulfilling God's ultimate wish in this world. And so when David came to Bathsheba, it was with a lot of excitement and happiness and passion. That's exactly the same way the prophet Nathan came to David. He said, look, King David, you are on a high level. You can do tremendous mission of doing tshuva and illustrating to the Jewish people what you can do. And King David responded by doing tshuva out of love, out of happiness, out of joy. I have this opportunity to actually fix myself up. Yes, I did something wrong, but yes, I can also do it in a positive way. And that's what Meir Premishlan says. He says, when you do tshuva in a downbeat way, you cannot fix something that you did out of happiness. You have to do it the same way. Just as much as you were excited about doing the sin, you have to be excited about now you have the ability to do tshuva. That's a very interesting mirror thing. You cannot fix bad by just feeling bad about yourself. You have to fix bad by realizing I did wrong, but this is now my opportunity to fix things up. This explains this famous story of the Baal Shem Tov. He once came to a town and they were all complaining that the Chazan was singing all the songs on Yom Kippur that normally people are, I'll hate the sin that I did for this, the sin I did for that, the sin. And he was joyous and he was singing and he was joyful and he was happy. And the Baal Shem Tov says, why do you do this? You're driving the people crazy. They're looking like you don't understand what Yom Kippur is all about. And he says, no, I do understand. I'm cleaning the palace of the king. The king has a dirty palace, and it's his palace, and I have the opportunity to clean it up. So therefore, I can be happy because I am getting rid of the schmutz from the king's palace. And Yom Kippur, and with the tshuva that we do, it's a good thing. When you take a bubble bath, it's good. It's clean. You're cleaning yourself up. So you can do it out of joy. You don't have to feel bad about who you are and what you did wrong. You can actually do it with joy and with happiness. This is how Chassidus understands these holidays, that they are opportunities for getting closer to God. They're opportunities for finding out who our true self is. To conclude with a story, which I liked a lot and so forth. So the Baal Shem Tov also explained that and my wife has said it many times, and I'm just going to give you another detail on it and so forth. And that is that when a person is sent to be judged and above in heaven, they don't just issue the decision. They show the person sort of a movie of his life, but they sort of disguise who that person is. And they ask you, can you make a decision on this person and decide what's supposed to happen? Just like with King David, the prophet Nathan came and gave him a situation and said, you pass the judgment on this person. And the person says, oh, that person, he's guilty. Look what he did. He did this, 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 this. That's what the soul says. So they says, okay, fine. Now we can clean you up. The question was asked, it says, why do they have to go this way? Why can't God in the heavenly court just judge the person? Why do they have to show them a movie in order for him to make the decision? And the answer is very important. Important is that the greatness of the Jewish soul, the magnificence of the Jewish soul, which is what this class is about, right? The magnificence of the Jewish soul, you cannot be judged. The angels have no right to judge us. They haven't been down here in this world. They don't know what it's about. They just see these things as positive and perfect and so forth. Other human beings don't understand you either. And so to speak, even God cannot pass a judgment. The only one who can pass a judgment on a person is himself. The only person, and that's how powerful the soul is. Only you can actually send yourself. God, no one else can send you to hell. Only you can send yourself to hell. So you're the only person who can actually decide what's going to be with your life. And that's why it says in the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, that it asks every single soul before they come down into this world, what kind of a life you want? And the answer in the soul actually decides, I want that challenge. I want those difficulties because I know that I'm going to be able to rise above them and I'm going to be able to succeed. And I'm going to bring down a tremendous light by being able to go through all these tremendous hardships and difficulties in this world because I think I can do that because I know the world is a place of a lot of challenges and a lot of difficulties. And so the soul is actually asked, what do you want to do? So the soul is such a powerful thing. It actually chose this particular life. And, that's a scary thought, but it's an impressive thought and so forth. And that is really, that's one of the big lessons. So the story that goes with this is sort of cute. There was once a guy who was under charges for murdering for a child and they couldn't find the child. They never found the body. So they put the murderer on trial, and the lawyer was seeing that the court case is going to go probably against his client. So he came up with a trick. He gets in front of the jury and he announces, I see you guys, you're all absolutely convinced this guy is guilty. He says, but I'm going to tell you something. In the next 30 seconds, The boy who is supposed to be the murder victim is going to walk through the doors of to this court, and you're going to see that you are jumping to conclusions. So everybody's glued to the door and they're watching the door. 30 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds. A minute goes by, 2 minutes go by. No kid shows up. So the lawyer says, actually, I was playing with your mind. I knew that there was nobody going to walk through the door, but I noticed an interesting thing. Everybody in the jury booth all looked at the door, which means that you suspected that I might be right, that the kid might still be alive. Therefore, I can't see how you can actually put my client, declare him guilty. The court adjourns. The jury goes back. It deliberates. It comes back into the room, and the decision is guilty. And the judge, the lawyer says, "What? How can you say that? You were all looking at the door." And the head of the jury says, "Yes, we were all looking at the door. But we noticed something else. There was one person in the court who was not looking at the door, and that was your client." He knew that nobody was going to walk through the door. So that's what the message the Baal Shem Tov was saying. He says, you don't realize the magnificence and the power of your own soul. You don't realize how powerful you are and how much you can affect this world. When you know that you can do tshuva like David HaMelech, when you know that you can change this world, when you know that the things that you did wrong might be wrong, but you know what? God is also setting you up to clean up a certain part of this world. You're cleaning up the palace of the king. So therefore, this was also designed that even you're going off the path was the ability to actually go back onto the path with more strength and more ability. And that is part of the whole season of Tshuva and the season of Yom Kippur and the season of Rosh Hashanah and the season of returning to Hashem. Returning to Hashem is really what the whole point of the season is. It's not about feeling bad about yourself or knocking yourself down. As I said, that doesn't accomplish anything. It just makes you feel bad and you get depressed and you start doing addictive acts and all that other kind of stuff. It doesn't accomplish anything. The only way to really do tshuva this day, the only way to get closer to Hashem, the only way to clean up this world is to realize that we've been given tremendous powers to be able to improve and to improve ourselves and improve the things around in this world. With that, I have spoken enough, and I'm going to hand the class over to
before you go, Yecheskel Shimon, who is the
my wife will
person
do that. Okay, I'm hearing two conversations, and this one I want to hear. She says I should be explaining the story of King David and Bathsheba, and some other time.
Who is the person who said that?
Okay, 1 second. I'm still getting another cross channel here, and this one I'm hearing. So she wants me to fill in some details here. She's afraid that we don't understand it. So people read the story of King David and Bathsheba too much in the literal sense, and they think that they read it and they think like he was just an evil person and he took somebody else's wife. The truth is that there's much more detail going on there. As I hinted at you, the Zohar says that it was actually she was designated for him from before birth, so she was really supposed to be his wife. It just had to come about through some very, very circuitous processes. And therefore, this was not a sin. This was really a positive thing. And so we have to, on some later day, we'll actually explain how we'll try and explain a little bit about the positive, what was really going on behind the story. But if you think that King David did a sin, the Gemara says right out there flatly, he was not sinning. He did not do a sin. Okay. And with that, I will turn over the microphone to Shalom Meshudas, unless there was some meat there. Specifically for me on what I said, it was something that was confusing, difficult.
Well, I was wondering.
Disturbing. Well, the teacher's supposed to disturb his audience a little bit, I suppose, but I hope that made it too disturbing. Go ahead.
I said I was just wondering who said to King David, who said that King David was meant to be with Bathsheba, but you just explained that it was the Zohar, and that you will explain to us why that was the case, because her husband was killed, so it's hard to understand it.
Oh yeah. Okay, good, very good.
But I think Emily wanted to say something.
No, I just said thank you.
Okay, very good. I don't want to encroach on my wife's time. I'll get in trouble.
No, you won't.
Thank you.
I'll never make you in trouble. Okay. So I want to right away say that when the Gemara says that whoever thinks that King David sinned is completely wrong. I want to tell you that the Gemara does not cover over sins. The Gemara is the most explicit. It says, it doesn't matter how big the rabbi is. It doesn't matter how big the king is. The Gemara tells it like it is. It doesn't spare anybody. And if they say that Yaskel will fill in the blanks. There's much more about her husband. There's much more. So, but you have to know that on the surface it sounds very different. But King David was one of the most amazing people in the world. Now, it is
But
true.
why did he suffer after that then, if it was okay?
He
Didn't he
loved to do
suffer for a lot of years?
teshuva. He loved to do teshuva. He didn't suffer. He loved to do teshuva.
I thought they said he cried in his cup for 22 years or
Yes,
something.
because he's doing teshuva. If he could find something that would bring him that he could, he didn't care about ego whatsoever. He didn't care about that's why Hashem had a reason that he decided that the entire royalty from that point on will only come through David, and only through David and his son that he had with Bathsheba. That's all our Jewish dynasty. And I think we spoke about it even last week, that the difference between King Shaul and David. King Shaul was like, he was like, even in stature, King Shaul was literally head and shoulders above everybody else. He was incredible, and he was and he had tremendous merit. But David was much more. Hashem loved Shaul, but David was much more beloved because David had no ego. If you told him he did something wrong, he'll do tshuva for 20 years. He only. You remember the story about his wife Michal, Shaul's daughter? We just told it last week that she chastised him for, because when during the entire reign of King Shaul, the ark with the tablets, whatever, the Ten Commandments was away. It was like it had been lost. It had been taken out to war like a talisman, and it was captured by the enemy, and it was out of Jewish hands. And David was, as soon as he could get it back, he got it back. And he was so ecstatic at getting the ark back, the Aron Kodesh back, that he danced in the streets. And he was just like so wildly happy for Hashem. And Michal, the daughter of Shaul, David's wife, she was David's wife, and she chastised him. She said, when you danced, an arm stuck out, a leg stuck out. She said, in my father's house, not so much, nothing like that ever happened. And David said, yes, but your father Hashem chose me over your husband. And it's not because, it was because the right way to be is that you don't care about your own ego. You don't care about the impression you're making on someone. You care about what's important to Hashem, and the ark was incredibly important to Hashem, the Aron Kodesh. So the fact that David did tshuva for the rest of his life is not a reflection on the gravity of the sin. It's not because the sin was an amazingly grave sin. So Yaskel will bring you more details hopefully next week, but it's a much more complicated story. And David HaMelech was one of the greatest people who ever lived, period. And And we're very lucky to have had him. And I'm not saying that because I'm a brainwashed. When you learn about these people's lives, and you realize that I can't understand anything about King Shaul, let alone David HaMelech. They were so wildly beyond my experience. So anyway, I just want to add that important fact because nobody should go away from this session thinking that, that David. No. Yeah, we owe everything to David HaMelech. Shall I tell you an interesting thing about David HaMelech? It says that Hashem planted David HaMelech. I mean, we're talking eons ago it was written that Hashem planted David HaMelech at the midpoint of Jewish history. Why? Because he was so strong and so strong for Hashem that he had to hold up all of human history from the beginning of creation to Mashiach. And if you take our current year, 5782, and you divide it in half, you get to David HaMelech's short little lifetime. You get to the time when he was actually king. Let's see, he was king from the age of approximately, he was anointed at 28, but it took him many years until he actually sat on the throne. But can you imagine, that's such a small thing? Like, that's like a period of at most a period of 40 years. It's even less than that. And if you take all of human history and you divide it in half from the beginning till now, you land in the middle of David's life, exactly as it predicted years ago, because the Rebbe told us Mashiach is here. So Hashem planted him exactly at the midpoint of Jewish history, not just Jewish history, world history, to uphold the whole world. And anybody who wants to have a conversation about the age of the world, I'm happy to do it with you anytime. So anyway, let's go to something else. So anyway, I want to start off with the 4 things, unless somebody has something they want to say. Okay, I want to start out with the 4 things that I usually say, which is that number 1, we're in an extraordinary time period, because how do we know? Because Lubavitcher Rebbe, who made astounding predictions, all of which have come true, said that this is the unfolding of the Geula, and there's so many, anyway, he was right in all the others, he's right in this. And number 2, our souls were handpicked to be at this time. Number 3, we were given all the tools we need to navigate this time. We were given the Torah, which is our guidebook, and we were given the mitzvahs, which are our power tools. And number 4, what we're doing tonight actively advances the cause of the process of the redemption. So anyway, I want to say that we're in a wonderful, wonderful month. The month before Rosh Hashanah is a wonderful month. It's called Elul, and it's written in Hebrew Aleph Lamed Vav Lamed, and it's an acronym for Ani Ladodi Vadodi Li. I am for my beloved, and my beloved is for me. It's a time of getting when a person, a Jew, it's a time when a Jew is. It's a special time for a Jew to get closer to Hashem. Hashem wants us to get closer to him before Rosh Hashanah. He wants us to reignite our love and to and get reacquainted with God. Summertime is a time that people sometimes forget all about everything. It's summer, there's the beach, there's the sun, there's everything else. But it's we can't afford that. We have to be close to the center of our life, which is Hashem. So in Elul, Hashem makes it easy for us to get close to him. How does he do that? It says that he shines into the world his 13 attributes of mercy. And those 13 attributes of mercy are shining incredibly in the month of Elul. All the way through Yom Kippur, they're shining. And how does it affect us? It makes it easier to talk to Hashem in this month, and makes it easier to talk to Hashem. So one extremely powerful thing to do in this month is that something I did. And do I have it here, or did I not take mine? Do I have it? I probably left it on the table, so I'll just do it from heart. The Rebbe tells us it's a great thing to make a cheshbon nefesh. What's a cheshbon nefesh? A cheshbon nefesh is an accounting of how you did in the past year. And I'm just gonna go get it. It's very powerful. right here. Sorry. Okay. So a cheshbon nefesh is the Rebbe recommends, it's really a wild process, but the Rebbe recommends that you make an accounting of how you did in the past year. And he says to do it month by month. And it's if you think, how am I going to remember what I did last, January? How am I going to remember what I did last November? So the Rebbe has a very practical suggestion. He said, start from the most recent weeks and write down the good things you did and the things that really need correction. And then when you've remembered the past couple of weeks, then go a couple of weeks, he says go month by month back. So I got as far back at least as April. And it was, at first it was daunting, but then I remembered more and more things. Yeah. Things that the summer for sure I could tell you about. And then I remembered holiday by holiday, really. And it was a very interesting experience. And after I made such an accounting of the good stuff that I did, the stuff I improved in, and the stuff that really needs improvement still, it was so easy for me to write. Every year before Rosh Hashanah, Lubavitchers write they write a report to the Rebbe about what they did that year and what they want for the coming year. And it was so much easier. I made a list of all the fronts that like a war, all the fronts that I improved on, and things that I improved on and I backslipped on things. And then I also made a list of things that I have not managed and that I have never succeeded in. And then I asked for help in the various things that I wanted help with. And it was and here's what it looks like. It's a rather long list. And I never in my life wrote such a thorough thing. Now, if you think about it, so it's a letter to the Rebbe, but it's also a letter to Hashem to report on what this Jew did this year and how this Jew improved from last year or slipped or whatever it is. Now, if you're going to ask an employer for certain things, you want to approach him for certain things. And who is that employer likely to listen better to? Is he likely to listen to somebody who just comes and says, listen, I need this and this and this and this and this? Or is he more likely to listen, or is he more likely to listen to an employee who said, listen, this is what I did for you in the past year, month by month by month. This is my accounting from this. This is my accounting from that. Here's how I spent this. Here's how I did that. Which person is the employer more likely to listen carefully to and grant what they want? And it's the person who operates his life like a business and says, yes, I'm in the business of being a Jew. I'm in the business of being, a righteous person, a good person, and this is how I'm doing, and this is the help that I need from you. It's so much more powerful than just asking for what you need. So anyway, I can't recommend it highly enough. It was fun, and it was good for me because I feel more solid. I know where I'm standing. So
can I ask you what reminded you that that's something that the Rebbe recommends? Like, did you just
okay? So first of all, I learned the Rebbe's talks. The last I learn every 6 days a week. I learn
right.
I learned the Rebbe's talks from the last year that he was talking, and and a couple of weeks ago at the beginning of Elul, the talk. Oh yeah, this is where the Rebbe tells us make a cheshbon nefesh. Start first, review the year that was, and then after you've reviewed the year that was, make a plan for the year ahead. And you feel like a businessman over life. It is it's an extraordinarily powerful thing. So another thing that's very effective, I didn't do this, but since I do it every night, maybe I thought I didn't have to do it. But this is not, the Rebbe doesn't, this is not from the Rebbe, this is just common sense. People make a gratitude list for the year that went by. And I had a friend, and she was single for umpteen years. And she made in Elul a gratitude list of everything that everything, not everything, of all the things that she could, all the great things that she could remember that happened to her the year, all the good things. And she got married very quickly after that. Like it, like it's a very powerful thing to be grateful, right? So so anyway, let me just go into I also want to make one point on the intimacy. We're still doing intimacy, how to have intimacy with another person. So so I was listening to a class on that, and the tip that this woman made is a very, very powerful tip. And she said that the person that in order to achieve intimacy with somebody else, a person is more likely to achieve intimacy with someone else if they're very good in self-care. If you give yourself what you need, you're much more available for another person. And nobody can do for you that which you can do for yourself. Not even God. You can do for yourself things that God can't do for you. Like for me, he can't make me go to bed early. He can't make me eat and drink at the right time. He can't make me drink enough. It's up to me. So anyway, one person, the person I was listening to who gave this little talk, somebody asked her, yeah, but if you're so busy taking care of yourself, isn't there a risk that you're going to not be able to carry out your responsibilities? You're going to be so carried away taking care of yourself. And so she said, she gave a definition of self-care. And it's this, I'll give you I also have thought about this a lot over the years. And my definition of the self-care that a person has to do is that when I'm talking self-care, I'm not talking about luxuries. I'm talking about the basic things in life: exercise, drinking, things that are important for maintaining you as you, enough sleep, all those things. Those are powerful statements we make to ourselves. We can complain to Hashem ad ein kates until there's no end about, you're not taking care of me. But very often we're not taking care of us. So anyway, my
That's a very
definition,
good point. Ooh.
my definition of taking care of yourself is the basics. Really, eating, drinking, sleeping, exercise if that's what you need. Any of those things that you need. She has a broader definition, and I also like her definition. She said, taking care of yourself means doing whatever you need to help you do your job better. So let's say for some person, she needs, Amy, what's that word? I don't remember it anymore. Bing, bling, what is it called?
Oh, you're talking about my blingy jewelry?
Bling, bling, okay. For some people, bling might be what they need in order to give them that spark to do their job. It's what
This is actually right, because I've given birth 3 times, but I would never do it without earrings. And that's not true for most people in the world. But for me, I need to have my earrings to be powerful during the day. I wouldn't work without earrings. I don't go anywhere have you ever seen me without earrings?
I don't think so.
No, it would be a shock. I would feel naked. I would feel like I had no clothes on if you ever saw me without earrings. You've never seen it because I wear them all day long. It's my power.
So it's whatever a woman needs. It might not be what you need, but whatever, I don't even have pierced ears, but it's whatever a particular woman needs in order to do her job. So it can't be just limited to food, drink, and whatever else. It's whatever she needs to function well. And I've told you this before. When I first came to Boston, and I was unfamiliar with everybody, I didn't know anybody in the community. I noticed right away that I was involved in women's groups and things like that, and I noticed that the women who took care of themselves who presented themselves in a very nice way, they tended to be the happiest people. So anyway, okay. So now I'm going to go straight from there to a whirlwind, absolute whirlwind, because it's already 11 o'clock. It'd probably take me 3 minutes. A whirlwind cliff notes for Rosh Hashanah. You know, in Rosh Hashanah, we, first of all, before Rosh Hashanah, we give charity because charity is a pipeline for you to receive blessing. That's not why we give charity. We give charity because we care about the people who need it. But it also happens to be a pipeline for you to receive what you need. And charity is incredibly important. Even a pauper gives charity. It's a pipeline. It's the most powerful pipeline that exists, and it's something not to be taken lightly. Also, talking to God, to feel whether it's formal davening or just talking to God. The process of talking to God refines you. It clarifies things for you because you don't lie to God. You don't mince words with God. So I read a study once that 80% of the words that come out of an American's mouth are not true. They're either exaggerations or excuses and stuff like that. 80% is incredible. But when you talk to God, you tend to talk straight. Anyway, it's a process that refines a person. And we know so I'm going to say 3 things. So the Rosh Hashanah davening is all about 3 things. It's all about, number 1, we are making Hashem our king. Hashem asks the Jewish people to, the big thing about Rosh Hashanah, okay, we'll get to it. The biggest thing about Rosh Hashanah is that God needs something from us on Rosh Hashanah, something that God cannot do for himself. And that is, he needs us to make him a king. You know, in the secular world, a king is just a king if he's the kid of somebody, right? But in the Jewish world, even if you're the kid of somebody, you are not king until the Jewish people accept you. So for example, David HaMelech, we spoke about this before. David HaMelech was anointed. He was picked by God to be the king, and he was anointed by God's prophet. The holy oil was poured on top of him, meaning God designated you as the next king. And it didn't matter until David was accepted by the people. He wasn't king. The same for Hashem. Hashem says, I'm going to be your boss no matter what, right? Hashem is our boss. But he doesn't just want to be our boss. He wants to be a king. And in Jewish understanding, a Jewish king is somebody that the people want. So on Rosh Hashanah, he asks us literally, please make me your king. I don't want to just be a boss. I want to be your king, meaning I want you to want me. I want you to trust me. I want you to say, I am glad that my life is in your hands. Yes, I vote for you. I vote for you to run my life. I do. I'm going to do what I can do, but I vote for you to be in charge. And that means that the decisions that you make for me, as hard as they may be to understand sometimes, I understand that they are for my ultimate best. And I vote for you, even though things happened to me last year that I did not like. But I still vote for you because I know, thank God, I'm not running my life. Thank God there is a God. Thank God that this is all good for me. Thank God for everything. And thank God that I actually see that I grow from it. Thank God. So, Hashem handles everything that happens. He decides everything that's going to happen to you, every single thing, every last detail. He's in charge of the world. And we, conversely, we're in charge of everything spiritual. God, we hand over the world's running to God, and he hands over the spiritual progress to us. Only we do mitzvahs. Only we bring, speed up the geula. Only we decide when it's going to happen by what we do. So that's the first big chunk. It's called Malchus. And if you look at a machzor, there's a huge chunk in the standing davening called Shemona Esrei, called the Amida. The first huge chunk is called Malchus. The second huge chunk is called Zichronos. People tend not to know about the first part, that we're making God a king. They only know Day of Judgment. Oh no. And Day of Judgment is a good thing because God looks at us in our totality and he decides what's good for us. And he remembers us in every tiny detail. And it's a very flattering thing. God remembers me in every tiny detail. I'm that important to him. It said in the last week's part, Rebbe explains from this past week's Parsha, Tavo, that there's a thing, Jews, when they got into the land of Israel, they were obligated to bring their first fruits, the first things that grew of pomegranates, grapes, olives, dates. There's 7 of them: wheat, barley, and I'm leaving out something. So anyway, and we got out of Egypt. We finally get to Israel. We finally have fruit trees. We have everything, but the very first of it we bring to God, and Hashem says, the Jewish people, you're my Bikurim, you're my first fruits, and I'm intensely in love with you. And every single Jew every single Jew, it doesn't matter, like you might look at another Jew and think, that person, no, that person is so, it doesn't matter what they do or they don't do, just by virtue of the fact that they're a Jew, they're infinitely precious with God, and God is infinitely tied up with them. The last thing that we do after Zechronos is shofros. And shofros, we know we blow the shofar. We talk about shofar a lot. And shofar does 2 things, right? Shofar, like a trumpet makes a king, we make Hashem king with the shofar. But we make Hashem king with the shofar, but the shofar also awakens our own neshama. The shofar sound, it's a big thing to hear the shofar, even during Elul, because it wakes up our neshama. Oh yeah, I remember what I'm supposed to be doing. And after the shofar is blown on the first morning of Rosh Hashanah, on next Monday morning after the shofar is sounded in Shul, a divine light comes into the world that was never in the world before. A more powerful light comes into the world. We can't see it with these eyes. Our neshama's eyes see it. And it's carrying all the blessings for everybody in the whole world for that year. It's contained in that light. And guess what? The good deeds, the mitzvahs that you do between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur decide how much of that stuff is going to be realized as actual blessing in our lives. So it's a big thing for Jews throughout the world to, if you don't, let's say there's a level that I cannot commit to this for the whole year. I just can't do it. They do it from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur. If it's a higher level of kosher and they know they can't commit to it for the whole year, they do it from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur. If there's a higher level of keeping Shabbos, they can't do it the whole year, they do it from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur. Because the mitzvahs, and you don't have to feel like a hypocrite. It's a Jewish thing that no matter what you feel you can do or you can't do, you try and do your best for those 10 days. So anyway, I'm going to end there. It's very late. So very late. I'm going to tell a story on in 2 minutes. Today was the Jewish anniversary of 9/11. Did you know that? Jewish 9/11 was on the 23rd of Tishrei in 2001. And I just heard a tiny little story. I'm going to tell it in a skeleton form. There was a guy who got on. He got onto a flight in Boston at that time, and that morning he got onto a flight leaving Boston. And before the plane took off, he realized that he left his tefillin on the seat in the terminal. And he said to the stewardess, "We didn't go anywhere yet. You need to open the door. I need to just run out and get my tefillin." And she said, "I'm sorry. It's a law. When the doors close, they don't open." And he tried to talk to her for several minutes, and she just was totally clueless. And so she was totally clueless. And so he said, "I have to speak to the pilot. I have to speak to the pilot." And finally they let him speak to the pilot, and the pilot told him the same thing. "Sorry, buddy. When those doors close, they just don't open." Then he starts yelling, "They're trying to keep me from my tefillin. They're trying to keep me from my tefillin." He's making such a ruckus that, they let him off the plane. He thinks he's going to run off the plane, get the tefillin and come back on. He runs off the plane. When that nudnik runs off the plane, they close the doors. They don't want him anymore. And they took off. that was the second plane that went into the World Trade Center. Everybody on board passed through. Everybody on board was killed. Yeah. This guy who was crazy about his tefillin was not killed. But not only that, they found out afterwards that the original plan was that the first plane and the second plane should land at the exact same moment. They should crash into the buildings at the exact same moment. And if that had happened, there would have been such a fireball that both buildings would have been consumed and everybody would have been consumed. And so his nudnik stuff about his tefillin not only saved his life, everybody on his plane perished, but thousands of people from the second tower, they had an 18-minute warning. Thousands of people were able to, their lives were saved. And anyway, so I don't like to tell 9/11 stories. There were miracles ad ein kates until I've heard so many miracle stories, but it's hard for me to understand 9/11. It was on such an incredible scope of evil and stuff like that. And it's hard to understand anyway how Hashem assents to things like that. But it's interesting to know that, God is in control, and mitzvahs are mitzvahs, and they're very, very powerful. Okay, so I want to end there and everyone should have a good night.
Shalom Judith, I wanted to tell you something before we hang
Yes.
up. That's why I was kind of waving at you. But first,
Yes.
I had never heard that story before. That was the most, first of all, what incredible stories have we heard tonight, right, ladies? Like, how amazing. Unbelievable.
Talk louder. For some reason, I can't hear you so
Oh,
well.
It's because I have the headphones in. That's why.
Thank you. Okay.
Saying I was waving at you because I did want to share something with you tonight. But first, I wanted to say that was an absolutely incredible story. I've never heard that story
I
before.
know.
Unbelievably incredible. And then tonight, look what amazing stories we heard tonight. It was like story after story after story, particularly tonight. That was like, wow, what a little before Rosh Hashanah gift. That was just the whole thing was just incredible. So
Thank
I wanted to say that. The second reason I was sort of flagging you down or waving you down is I really had in my mind to share something with you tonight and anyone else who wants to hear it. That every year around Elul, I try very hard to find a good reflection book. And it just so happens that because I'm on Goodreads, I read a lot. I'm in the Jewish Book Club, but the book for September happens to be The Sunflower. Has anybody ever heard of this book? This is absolutely an incredible experience, and it's like almost a perfect book for Elul. It's interesting because I didn't know anything about it. In fact, until I got it from the library, I didn't even look at it until I prepared to read it. And right on the cover of it, it's by Simon Wiesenthal, who was in the Holocaust. It starts with a true story that happened to him while he was in a concentration camp. But right on the cover of the story, it has this question, and the question is, it's a moral question, that if you are a prisoner in a concentration camp, and you encounter a dying SS officer, a Nazi officer, who begs for your forgiveness, do you give it? So, of course, you're required to think for yourself, what would you do in this moral situation? But the entire book is 55 spiritualists of varying kinds giving their answer to this question after he tells his story. And it's about a third of it is Jewish, maybe half. But in it, they have the Dalai Lama. They have Robert Coles, who is the spirituality for children guy at Harvard. They have Roger Kamnitz, who did the comparison between the Jews and the Buddha and the flower and the lotus. They have the Heschel and Heschel's daughter, Susanna Heschel, writing commentary. They have Tversky. Tversky, is that his name? I have like so many different greats, who are known for spirituality, giving their answers to this question. And I thought it was such an interesting book. I don't even think it's a new book. Obviously, the Holocaust happened an incredibly long time ago, but just so fascinating to hear how people respond to this question. I already asked my husband and my aunt, and it was interesting just to hear how people frame this. But I thought it was the story is of the title. The sunflower represents a certain something that he tries to explain in his writing of the book. But basically, the subtitle is something to do with the limits and possibilities of forgiveness. So, given that Yom Kippur is all about, do we forgive other people? and Are We Forgiven? I just thought it was interesting to
Very
mention.
interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
It fell into my lap. I would have never known
Yeah.
anything about this book. I didn't even know anything about it before I ordered it from the library. And when I picked it up, I didn't even look at it. It really wasn't until I went to actually pick it up that I saw what this thing was about. So,
Very interesting.
So,
ah.
Shlomo Sudas, can I ask you, this woman that told the story, I'm just brushing quickly. I didn't mean to cut you off, Amy, because wow,
No,
I'm
no.
glad that was very nice. I already wrote down the sunflower.
If you don't mind,
The
I'm
woman
going to
that
stop recording because people tend to listen to classes that have, I'll tell you,